Hello and welcome back to Patrons Golf. A nice little break after the US Open, but we are back for the John Deere Classic. So we're 2 weeks away now from the Open Championship, the last major of the year, and I think this is a really interesting tournament for me. I don't think it's one that's probably particularly enjoyable for most people to watch, but I think it's interesting from the point of view of the player's approach in terms of what you're doing for your preparation here. And I think I was thinking about this earlier, uh, just as you do. But this is a really, I guess, different test to what the players are going to face next week if they're going over for the Genesis in Scotland, and then obviously onto the Open Championship in England. But I think this is something where this is a weakened field, as you can see by the previous winners here. I mean, no disrespect to Seb Straka, but Brian Campbell and Davis Thomas being the last two winners here. Obviously, I guess probably two fairly middle rung PGA Tour players. I think it's interesting. You've got two real angles of approach. If you're a top player, a player who's obviously likely considered a contender at the Open, I think you want to skip this event, head over, head over to Scotland or to England a week early, get your preparation in there. Obviously, vastly different conditions to what we're probably going to see in Illinois this week to what they're going to be facing. Now, on the flip side, you've got, I think, for a lot of players in this event, and we can we'll obviously go over the outrights in terms of who the favorites are for this week. I think it's a really interesting decision because on one hand, my approach would be the approach I just outlined. Like I'd be wanting to get over to the UK. I'd want to be playing some links golf quite early. But you've got a course here in TPC Deere Run, which is one of the easiest to play on tour. Plays almost two shots, under par consistently. And I think this is if you're a player like Chris Gotterup, who is the favorite, or one of the top favorites with Ben Griffin this week, this is someone who's had success in links golf, but is someone that probably is completely fallen away from like the early part of the season in terms of his form. Do you want to head over, head over to head over to Europe, head over to the UK with feeling really good about your game? Obviously, if you look at some of the results here, Davis Thompson won at 28 under, heading into two probably really tough weeks of golf. Do you want to have a week where you know what, you're playing an easier course, you're feeling good about yourself, and you can leave the a really interesting point in um the tour schedule before we start to get to the meaty stuff. Feeling good about your game. I think for a player like Chris Gotterup, it's probably a good decision, but for other players it probably doesn't make sense. So probably probably enough time talking about that. Yeah, we are in TPC Deer Run this week. It's a weak field, but I think there'll be probably quite a lot of quite a lot of attention paid to it. And I think it's largely going to be based around the fact that we've got Jackson Koivun in the field. It's his first professional start, coming off the low amateur at the US Open, 2 weeks ago, finishing tied for 23rd, as his last start as an amateur. Now everyone is well aware of how completely dominant his college career was. I think everyone's super excited to see what he can do as a pro, and I'm one of those people. I'm super excited to see him. I was actually looking forward to probably betting on him in this event, but good grief, have the bookmakers come out and killed any possibility of that. but we will get into that a little bit later. So TPC Deere Run. It's a gettable course, but probably one that requires players to be a little bit strategic. Designed by former PGA Tour winner D.A. Weinbring alongside of Chris Gray. Course kind of features some dramatic elevation changes, rolling fairways, and kind of creates a little bit of a parkland layout that rewards aggressive shot making rather than someone who simply overpowers the course. It's a smaller course. Most modern PGA Tour courses rely on length. I think Deere Run places a premium on positioning and precision. There's lots of elevation changes which kind of mess with your club selection, and I think the bunkering and I guess the tree-lined corridors, they do kind of force players to take the mini drive, put the mini driver in the bag, or take that 5 or 7 wood and take that off the tee. Uh, in saying that, like it's not a really difficult course for these guys. Like the bunkering's not difficult, the green structures are not difficult, and what we see is and we'll go into last year's results, but what you see is it comes a bit of a putting fest. Guys who putt well have really strong weeks approach wise. Other guys who perform well here. We'll take a look at last year's results. As you can see there, Brian Campbell lost 4 strokes off the tee and still won. It's kind of fitting that, Campbell's his other victory came from maybe maybe the luckiest bounce off a tree you'll ever see in the history of golf. And it broke the hearts of many on golf Twitter who were all over Aldrich Potgieter. But if Brian Campbell's winning an event, it shows you that the field is probably weak. It shows you that the course is going to be fairly gettable for most players. That's no disrespect to Brian Campbell. Obviously, he's good enough to be a 2-time winner on the PGA Tour, so tip my hat to him. But I think what you can kind of see from the top 10 here is there's a pretty consistent theme. You got to putt really well. You've got to hit really good approach shots, and you're not going to be penalized too much off the tee. The rough isn't super thick out here, and around the greens, you're not going to get penalized too much. I think even if you look at Nick Dunlap here, like that's obviously a guy who really struggles to keep his drives on planet Earth, but he gains 5 strokes approach, gains almost 11 with the putter, and um, he didn't even finish in the top 10. That hurts. But look, that's kind of what you're going to get here. We take a breakdown of some of the holes. Look, all of the par fives are completely gettable. They're all birdie chances. You're going to have to score well on the par fives this week. We've got 3, and look, when you've got a really low scoring tournament, you're going to have to score well on the par fives. There's a few holes that play a little slightly above par, nothing too bad. The 9th, which is probably it's ranked the toughest, but it's a 500-yard par 4, and then the 18th, 476-yard par 4 as well is the 2 toughest holes that players will see. Scrambling, as I kind of said, with I guess the nature of the green complexes, don't really have to. You don't really have to be lights out around the green to find success here. You can get away with just surviving. Greens and reg goes up based on the tour average. And if we look at, the top 10 versus the field here, typically you can see here that, they're gaining 1.2 strokes with the putter and almost 1 full stroke on approach, as opposed to off the tee and around the greens, which is just half a stroke. So the method here is pretty clear. You can get away with some errant tee shots. You're gonna be able to, I guess, just rely on pure approach and putting. Course fits. Probably no real surprises here. Ben Griffin, Chris Cotter up, two favorites for this event. I think Jacob Bridgman is another one, a player I will speak about in a little bit. Obviously, a really good putter. And then a few guys who are actually playing some really good golf right now, which is good to see. Tom Kim as well has had kind of like a really good month and a bit. Keith Mitchell's always an interesting one for me in events like this. And then, yeah, you've got Jordan Spieth and Christian Bezuidenhout, who weirdly kind of showed up in a lot of the metrics I was looking at um, for for this event. So that usually is a good sign that it's not the strongest field. We'll take a look at the outright market here. So favorites, Ben Griffin, Chris Goddard up. I spoke about Ben Griffin a little while ago in terms of player who obviously won three times last year. Probably took a little bit of time to get going this year, but he's kind of, his putting has been really strong of late, and his approach game is trending. I think the disappointing thing about betting him, not maybe not a lot this year, but probably post Masters, I did kind of get involved in his betting action a few times. We've kind of seen the value be taken out of it now, as they've kind of caught on that he's picking it up, and I've got absolutely zero to show from it. So that's disappointing, but that's the nature of it. Um, as I kind of alluded to earlier, Jackson Koivun is the fifth favorite in this betting market. Like I've seen, you can see kind of the best price there. DraftKings is at 28. I've seen as low as 16, which is just absolutely mental. Uh, like I'm going to try and get involved, probably in play here. Potentially I'll look at first round leader if I can get like a little bit of a better price, but like I can't stomach that price as much as I do want to kind of get from just a fun aspect to bet him in his first week as a pro, because that would be something. But yeah, not a lot else here that's really kind of, I guess, stands out from the top of the market. Eric Cole is one you could probably make a case for at this price. He's had a really good month of golf. It's probably fairly unlucky not to register a win. So I could see him easily popping up in an event like this. He's always a great shout for a first round leader. I feel like his spike rounds are huge. Um, Sanjay, his putting numbers are really good right now. I could definitely make a case for him kind of in this middle tier of the betting market here, especially knowing that this is a week where you kind of a big element of it's going to be a bit of a putting show. Tony Finau, it's interesting to me at this price. I haven't bet him, full disclosure, but I did take a good look at it. Even someone like Johnny Kiefer, who I think is, really talented. And when I did have the chat with James Nitties, who, does cover the Corn Ferry Tour, he spoke so highly of him, and kind of, even, mentioned that he could see him potentially being a President's Cup or Ryder Cup player in the future, which is obviously a massive, would be a massive jump from, I guess, where he's at this year. It is his first year on tour, so you can kind of fault him or give him a little bit of a break for not completely, not completely firing. Max Homer, another interesting proposition there. I think what did he finish? Yeah, T5 last year. some good, uh, you know, lost almost 2 strokes or 1.5 strokes around the greens, but like as we kind of said, that's okay. You can lose strokes off the tee, you can lose strokes around the green. If your approach and putting is good, happy days. Uh, all right. Before I break down my player profiles, I'll just go into what the key indicators for me this week for course success. We've kind of got like a strong course history here. Like, this event's been held here for quite a while, and we the profile of previous winners is that of players who work with the course and manage it. Accurate driving being paired with strong wedge play, really strong putting. Uh, and we've already covered the fact that the key separators per round from strokes gained is approach and putting and kind of not off the tee and scrambling. So for me, the top five this week that I'm kind of looking at is strokes gained approach, strokes gained putting, good drives gained, approach proximity from 75 to 100. We're going to see a lot of wedges this week, and then birdie or better. We need guys who are. We need. Oh, that has jumped off. Let me just fix that. How's that for timing? We do need guys who. Uh, we do need guys who score really well, and that is. Give me one sec here while I bring this back up. All right, we're back. So with that said, well, my first player is already up here. First guy I'm looking at this week is someone that you can see his player profile is a little bit, it's not filled out completely just because of the lack of PGA Tour starts, but we do have some data for him. Look, in an event which has had so much hype around the, Jackson Koivun and, one of the, I mean, viewed as one of the PGA Tour's, future brightest stars. The betting market has seemingly just completely forgotten about Blades, who's going to be one of those as well. He's absolutely tearing through the Corn Ferry Tour at the moment. His year has been so good without having a win where he's kind of getting these, I guess, these PGA Tour starts, but it almost makes sense for him to just go back to the Corn Ferry Tour at times and to shore up that status. But he's kind of getting close enough with some of the performances he's had on the PGA Tour where it's not going to matter. Like he'll be able to get his card. And I've said this before. I'm betting him. I'm betting him whenever I can in a PGA Tour event because he's so electric. He's on 59 watch at the American. He finishes, tied for 18th, which doesn't factor in that he was in the final pairing with Scotty Scheffler. On Sunday had an absolutely nightmare of a round, but he's that good. He probably should have won in Puerto Rico. He finishes third. Uh, and look, everything he's done in the PGA Tour this year has been great. Top 10 in Myrtle Beach, 14th at the Byron Nelson, and at the price I got him at, which was 70. I haven't seen what his price is now. I think that is such extreme value for someone who has the approach and scoring ability like he does. In the last 20 rounds, he's seventh in strokes gained approach, he's 20th in strokes gained putting, and he's second in birdie or better percentage. So this is a auto auto bet, smash the bet button, and I'm excited to watch him this week. Next guy I've got is Denny McCarthy. When there's an event like this where putting is so important, I do want a guy. I do want a guy in my betting card who is a really, really strong putter and brings a really strong putting aspect. For this spot, like I was kind of looking at two guys. Jacob Bridgman was one, and Denny was the other. Ultimately, it just came down to a price thing for me, and also the course history. So his last four starts here, he's got a T11, a T7, and two T6s. When you kind of think about, obviously, historically, someone who can't win on the PGA Tour, but when you think about kind of, you know, Denny being successful, it's a course like this. He's not going to wow you with his distance off the tee, but he's a really strategic golfer, putts really well, and this is the kind of week where someone like him pops up and has success, which is evident based on his course history here. As you can see there, elite putting approach is good. Driving distance is poor. The the one thing that I do like, there's not a lot of great stuff on his recent. If you're really diving into his metrics, you're not gonna, nothing's gonna blow you away. But I do like that there's an uptick in driver accuracy. I don't think there's not a huge penalty for missing the fairway this week, but we do kind of want guys who are just going to hit fairways, and kind of plot their way through the course. And I think at this price, so he was at 50s. I think Bridgman was at maybe at 30s when I did this. So like that's really all it came down to. I do like Bridgman's profile going into this as well. If that's, I guess if you're not a Denny believer, which I can fully appreciate that as someone who hasn't won, as opposed to Jacob Bridgman, who's won a signature event this year at a really tough track, and Jacob Bridgman was T5 here last year as well. So something to consider. Next guy, this is a guy I'm really excited about this week. I think a lot of people are, is Emiliano Grillo. Uh, like this is like outside of Blades, this was my easiest bet. His price has kind of softened a little bit from what it opened. I was able to get 95s. It says you can get 85s at DraftKings. Last time I checked, I saw 70s, so I'm not sure if that's that's correct or not. But look, I think it's still a play, even if it is at that price. It's definitely a play at 85, but coming off at T23, the US Open, T20 at the RBC Canadian Open. He gained strokes with his putter, and finished second here last year with a T2 back in 2022 as well. So this track clearly suits him, and his price completely stood out as opposed to like who he was up against, who was sitting around him in the betting market. He's accurate off the tee, and he's one of those guys that's kind of like a streaky scorer, and I think that kind of is. I mean, that first round leader, like that's a 81s. I would love to get 81s. He's definitely someone I'm looking for. Top finishes, first round leader. I think the best thing with him is he you're gonna get a show when whether it's good or bad. I think he's someone who yeah who's gonna entertain you. He's made his last four cuts since the PGA, which is promising because the PGA kind of capped off a really, really ugly, difficult month of golf. Some key ranks, as you can see, a lot of green here, which is great. The accuracy numbers are super. Some key ranks from the last 20 rounds. He's third in driver accuracy. He's 22nd in approach. He's 26th, sorry, in birdie or better percentage. And he's 11th in proximity from 50 to 100. So there's a lot of stuff there that's going to be successful this week. And as we've said, it's a guy who's finished second here in 3 starts. So at that price, that is you could spend your money so much worse. Next guy is Zach Blashow. I always feel like I say this incorrect. I think from a price point, this is probably the best value that I've come across. I think his approach game and his accuracy off the tee are kind of trending up in the last month. He did miss the cut at the Canadian Open, but has a string of four T28s or better. In the prime month before that, and a T6 at the Byron Nelson. From like a metrics point of view, he ticks a lot of boxes for what the success looks like around here. I think the only thing I'm slightly worried about is, whether the putter can hang around for 4 days of kind of, like a really low scoring. But at this price, like, you can get 106 at BetCris. I can see 110 out there, which is what I took. Look, the green complexes are not overly difficult, and I think like someone who probably isn't one of the better putters, although his putting numbers say average. Look, it's not gonna overwhelm him. Some key ranks from the last 20 rounds: 17th in a strokes gained approach, 23rd in overall proximity, 18th in proximity 50 to 100 yards, and 23rd in birdie or better percentage. So at this at this price in the market, like this is great value. And if we want to just go back and look at the results from last year, there are a lot of names here who are kind of in this kind of player quality tier, if we just want to be completely honest. So there is an absolute possibility that he's someone who's going to be kind of thereabouts on Sunday. So, well, I certainly hope so. But yeah, I think he's a great value. He's someone I'd be looking at for top finishes as well. And yeah, he's someone who's got every chance this week. Last guy is a really tough one to look at when you look at his numbers at the Travelers. This one's I'm not going to even sit behind it and make like this the strongest case for it. I think what it comes down to is the price and his course history here. His last six starts, he's got a T5, T6, T10, T23, and he won the 2021 event. So his course history here is really strong. I think when you think about his game, this is the kind of course that you're like, oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense that it fits him. With a weak field, this is the kind of event you'd take shots at. Yeah, Brian Campbell missed six cuts heading into this event. I think six cuts out of the 10 or 11 starts before this event last year. So look, I don't think this is a course that that you're going to need to come in with super hot form, and he is not going to do that. He doesn't putt well, but what he does well is he drives the ball accurately, and he's pretty good with his irons typically. In the last 20 rounds, he's second in drive accuracy, third in good drive percentage, and seventh in overall proximity. So I think he's going to give himself every opportunity. It's just the putting, which, as you can see from almost the last month of golf, it's diabolical. So you're getting, that's obviously baked into the price. And yeah, like it's probably someone I just have a smaller bet, maybe like an each way with a top five or top eight, but it's not someone I'm probably going super crazy on and getting really involved in the top finishes. But there are my five guys for the week. Yeah, it'll be an interesting. I'll watch it purely based on the Koivun factor, Blades Brown as well. I am super excited to watch both of those guys play because I do think that they're kind of the next wave of PGA Tour players and stars, and